Hello and welcome to ERPWebTutor.com. This is Roydeep, and in this video we are going to explain the concept of conversion for an employee data. Now we will talk more about different types of conversion in HCM, but this is going to be the first topic that we will cover on the series of conversion video tutorials. So the objective here is from the perspective of a technical developer. So what they need to understand when doing the work on an HCM implementation for data conversion. Now, the data conversion for HCM, the key conversion that we normally do, that include the employee data conversion. Then we have the address. We sometimes do the phones, assignment, salary, and if we also do the payroll, we will also convert some of the elements or even the tax information. So the first and foremost is the employee conversion. So we will start talking about the employee conversion. Now, before we start explaining things from the perspective of a technical developer, the most important thing that needs to happen before any conversion is the work that is done by the functional consultant. So what needs to happen is they need to finalize a layout which is going to be the format that the client will use to provide the data extract. Now again, we need to understand that any HCM implementation client is probably going to have some kind of a legacy system from which they are bringing over the data. Now, as a functional consultant, when we configure Oracle, what we need to do is we need to decide, we need to discuss with the client and come up with a plan on how the template or the data extract template is going to look like. Now that is something that is decided by the functional consultant based on the configuration. So in this example, so let's take a look at the enter and maintain screen, which is this is where we will get the information from. Now, I'm not trying to create a new employee, but I'm just going through the different forms, and for this demo tutorial, I'm trying to come up with certain fields that I will be using in the layout. So based on this screen, see the first name, last name, middle name, date of birth. These are certain fields that most conversion would include. The gender, also sometimes the marital status as well, the social security number, the employee number. So these are the different information that you would normally capture. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to identify the fields from the screen. From the office details tab, I'm going to bring in the mail information. So these are the fields that I would show you during the conversion. Now I have my layout, which I have built here with certain fields from the employee screen. The employee number, last name, first name, middle name, previous last name is something that is used by the female employees when they get married. They say they want to keep their the previous last name. That information can be stored somewhere in Oracle, so that is something we want to convert. The preferred name, the gender, the date of birth, email, social, marital status, hire date, and the business group that the employee is going into. So this is my sample layout with a mock-up data. Now what the functional consultant would do is they would send this this layout or this template to the client, and then they would get the data from their legacy system as per this format. Now at this point, what the functional consultant would do is send this information to the technical developer that, okay, so here is how the template looked like. So this is these are the fields that I'm going to load into Oracle from the legacy data. So the technical developer takes control from here for the conversion and start working on the code. Now, before we dive into the code, the first thing that I will just explain the two steps that happens from a technical developer side is they need to first create a staging table which would be used to get the extract from the Excel spreadsheet that the client provides, either a CSV file or a TSV, or it could be, you know, a tab separated, pipe separated. A CSV or comma separated is the most commonly used file or extract that most clients use. It's the easiest to deal with. Now, when that file or the extract comes in, so that has to be stored into a staging table first. So that's why we call it the staging table, and that's the first thing that the developer needs to build. Now, the staging table is used during the conversion to store the extract files into some kind of an Oracle table, and then also to update when you do the validation of the data and you do a load, and then you can track, you know, which records in the table got successfully loaded into Oracle, which are valid, and if they're not, you can keep an error log in the table saying that this record did not make it to Oracle because of the following reasons. Is, you know, whatever error message that that you get when you do the validation. So that's the need of a staging table. That's the step one. The step two is the actual code that you would write to load the information into Oracle, the actual database package procedure. Now, before we get into the database package procedure, so let's try to get to a point where we build the table, the staging table based on this extract. Now, as I see this staging table and I'm a developer, the first thing I need to understand is, okay, I need to store these fields, I need to create these columns in my staging table. Now, employee number, last name, first name, middle name, previous name, preferred name, gender, date of birth, and I have to identify which are the ones that I need to do a validation on, what kind of validation I need to do, and if the validation needs any extra column. Like, for example, I know that a lot of information that when I'm going to write a package, I need to derive the ID and store or pass as parameter. Some of the fields like the names, I don't need to derive an ID. So those considerations has to be done. So I will explain that when I get to the point where I'm defining the table. My staging table will definitely have to have these columns in here. So starting from last name or employee number to the business group. So let's get into my PL SQL tool and see what I've done. So I can see that I am just creating a table. I'm calling it XXEMPSTG, and I have created these columns as per the layout. So employee number, last name, first name, up to the business group. So I can clearly identify, you know, what each field, what kind of data type that I need to associate with each field. The last name is a character, so I'm doing varchar2. I'm not going to explain too much on what kind of data types are available at this point. I'm going to assume that you know the concept of PL SQL. That is very essential before you dive into writing programs for Oracle ERP. So make sure you know good PL SQL before you actually start doing this. So the first step that I'm doing here is I'm creating a table with these mandatory columns. When I'm saying mandatory, I don't mean that they're required or anything. All I'm trying to say is these columns exist in my layout, so I need to have them in my table so that information comes over and finds a column in my table to get stored into. Now that raises my question is, okay, I see employee number. Do I need to derive anything else from employee number? No, what I'm going to load that employee number into Oracle. Last name, first name, these are just free text in Oracle. So now if you look at the screen, I can see that this last name, I can have anything. I can have first name, anything. So there's no validation for first name and last name in terms of the actual formatting. So all I need to get is a value. So last name is required. It doesn't care what my last name is. It could be anything. Therefore, I don't need any validation except that I have a value. Now, as per my requirement, I want to say that the last name, the first name, is those two information has to be passed. So I have to have a validation that the last name has come from the extract. So that if the last name is missing in my extract, I'm going to flag it saying the last name does not exist or the first name does not exist. So that validation will come. But anyways, so far as the data validation, there is none except that these are required. Now the middle name, there's no validation. Previous last name, no validation. It could come, somebody could have it, somebody may not have it. And there is no validation on the format known as. There is no validation. Now we coming to the next field, which is sex, and I'm trying to find in Oracle where is that field. It's called gender right here, and I can see that it is not a free text. It has three specific values: male, female, and unknown gender. Therefore, if I get a junk value in there, I need to do something about it. Therefore, I need to derive the actual code behind the sex and get it from some other table wherever it is getting stored and get that information. Therefore, what needs to happen is I need to store another column in my table which is called the sex code, which will store the derived code for the value in this column sex. Now date of birth. So let's first, before we get into the next column, I will bring in the extra columns that is going to be required in this table. I can see the date of birth. There is no validation. Email address is again a free text. National identifier is also a free text. It just need to follow the specific format for the US business group. Like the US Social Security number format follows a specific pattern. So that is something we don't really need to validate from our end because the Oracle API does the validations itself. Again, we just don't want to talk too much ahead at this point. Let's keep it simple. The marital status. So let's take a look at the field in here. It has a list of value. So these are the different values that I have. It could be any value depending on what configurations I have done. But the objective here is that it is not a free text. I cannot just type in married or single or whatever I want. So it has a list of value. Therefore, the value that comes in my Excel spreadsheet married has to be validated against a valid value in Oracle. Now you can have married coming in with an incorrect spelling. So you need to understand that, okay, when that happens, the client needs to fix those error records, because now you're validating against some table which stores the actual meaning, and you are deriving the code from that actual or the lookup table which stores the values for different marital statuses. Now, the next thing is the hire date. The hire date is just a date. It doesn't need any validation. The business group, This is the name of the business group, and you can tell from now that, of course, when you're the business group is nothing but an organization in Oracle. Now, every time you create an organization, it gets it generates an ID in the background. So the business group is not good enough. The API would probably need a business group ID. So any value or any data in my extract which is mapped to a list of value in Oracle has to be derived with the correct ID or the code for that. So now let's take a look at what extra columns I need to add for this in my table. So here am I. I can see that I have a few additional columns for deriving the IDs. The first thing is the person type ID. I know that I'm going to load all this data as an employee. Depending, I'm trying to keep it simple. If I was loading applicants or ex-employee, I would do a different kind of validation. But for now, to keep things simple, I am going to show you that every data that comes in the extract is an employee, is an active employee. Therefore, the value employee is not good enough. Again, if you look at Oracle, if you see that, oh, I'm going to create employment, it is not a free text. So there is some kind of an ID or a code that exists in the background. Now, this is the most important thing that you need to understand as a developer, that you need to analyze that extract and go through each and every field in Oracle to decide which one needs an ID and which one is a free text before you actually start writing the code. The other thing that might help you is if you try to analyze the actual Oracle provided API. So we will talk about that in a few minutes. So, but the idea is to explain, where you need additional columns to derive the IDs and where you don't. Now, the person type ID I need to use for passing the ID for the type employee. The record status, and the error message. These two are the additional columns that I always use in my staging table to track the status of the record and also if there's any error message for the data. Now the record status, I'm saying default is U, which I'm going to call it unprocessed. So when the data gets loaded in my staging table, the value for the record status is going to be U. Now, as I'm going to process the data, I'm going to keep changing the status of that record to different values, which we will see in a moment. But I'm going to keep this extra column to identify the status of a record. The error message is very simple. I'm going to do a validation and I'm going to store the error message in some column. So I need an extra column for error message. Now, we discussed that the sex is a value that comes from a code. So I'm going to derive the code and store it in the extra column called sex code. Similarly, marital status was an LOV or list of value. So I'm going to do a validation and I'm going to store that in marital status code. Business group, of course, it's going to have an ID. Therefore, I need a column to store the business group ID. Now, this is the table that I'm going to create as my staging table. So let me go ahead and create the table. Fantastic, my table got created. Now we need to understand that once we have the table, of course, if the functional person comes up with, say, oh, we need to store more information, we need to load more information into Oracle, we can always do that. We can keep adding columns to this table. Now, again, that is always a possibility, but this is what I'm going to create for my sample training, or based on the layout that I have. We can always come back and enhance this process and keep adding columns and make it more efficient. So we will end the video at this point. The next one, we will explain the concept of Oracle delivered APIs in HCM. This is something unique to HCM. Not many modules have that concept of Oracle delivered APIs. They normally use a program. They just use a staging table and use a program to load information, like for example POs, even that's an example that you just load the information into the purchase order, staging tables, or the interface tables, and then run a process to load. So Oracle HCM just works a little different. It's not simple enough to just get the data, do some validation, load it into a staging table. It's not that simple. You gotta understand the concept of Oracle delivered APIs. So that's something we will start talking in the next tutorial. So keep following us, and we will show you the full end-to-end conversion strategy for employee conversion. Thanks for watching.